Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had promised nothing but, quote-unquote, the naked truth, but he disappointed. While he asserted that those responsible must be tried in Turkey itself, he did not present any proof in his speech in the Turkish parliament in capital Ankara. Most of what he said was already out in the public domain, with Turkish media houses reporting bit by bit on the Khashoggi saga. Instead of giving some answers, Erdogan had his own set of questions. These are the 6 questions the Turkish president posed to Saudi Arabia.
So all 15 people who have backgrounds that are in one way or another connected to what happened or what was planned. Why was this team of people assembled in Istanbul on that day, on the day of the murder? Who gave the instruction to these individuals to come to Istanbul? We're looking for an answer to this question as well. Why was the consular premises not opened to examinations on that day or the following day, but many days later? We need an answer to this. Now, as it is now clear, of course, there was a murder, and it was clear from the beginning. Then why was there a slurry of incoherent statements? And now there is official acknowledgement that there was a murder. Where is the body? Why do we still not have the body? If the information that the body was given to a local cooperator, co-conspirator, and this is information by an authority, by the way. Now my question is, who is this local co-conspirator?
No new leads, no proof, and a character certificate to the Saudi king. That pretty much summed up Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's parliament address. And to understand that address better, we're now being joined by a very special panel of guests. So we have Karen Atiyah of the Washington Post joined us live, and we're also now being joined by Honor Erim, political analyst. We're also being joined by Azam Tamimi, a friend of Jamal Khashoggi. Thank you, all of you, for taking time out to be with us here on World is One. I'm going to start with you, Karen. Talk to us now. So many questions hanging over the U.S. and the U.S. president with these latest set of details bringing us ever so closer to the truth behind Khashoggi's murder.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I share what your presenter said, that it doesn't give us proof, no conclusive proof. 2 weeks ago, Erdogan said that he promised he would announce to the world the findings of any investigation. Instead, the evidence has been sort of leaked through papers that are linked to the government. And so that's what has had the Saudis on the back foot. Now today also, Gina Haspel, who's the head of the CIA, flew to Turkey in order to meet over the possible evidence that the Turks have. So it's really a question of just how much the Turks are willing to turn over to the Americans. So far, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he is not seeing the evidence, in particular a tape of audio allegedly of the killing itself. So right now, it still just seems like Turkey is holding its cards to its chest.
Oh, absolutely. Erdogan promised the naked truth, Karen, but that naked truth wasn't all that clear in the parliament address. I want to understand how are the reactions in the U.S. To these latest developments, because keep in mind today, before Erdogan rose up to speak in the Turkish parliament in Ankara, the entire world waited with bated breath, and I'm sure that includes the authorities in the United States of America.
The reaction is disappointment. I think we were hoping that we could sort of put an end to this to a certain extent, that we would have this quote-unquote smoking gun evidence, and then from there the chain of reactions of consequences, of perhaps sanctions, of perhaps other measures that the U.S. and other actors could take could begin to happen. But now, again, without any sort of evidence, it just prolongs this sort of agonizing slow drip of sort of grotesque details that has us all on our tiptoes every day, but not closer to what we actually want. And that is the truth of what happened to my colleague and my writer, Jamal Khashoggi.
And if I were to ask you, in terms of sanctions, what's the likelihood now that the U.S. would impose sanctions?
So now we know, at the very least, these 18 officials, depending on their closeness to the government, there is talk of the Global Magnitsky Act, which could impose travel bans and freezes on individuals who are complicit in this killing. Now that also, again, which is why we need the full truth and the full investigation, if it goes all the way up to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, that could very likely include him too. Now I will say Congress, for a long time, even over the war in Yemen, has been floating the idea of at least banning arms sales to Saudi Arabia, based on other human rights abuses. So this only puts more ammo in the hands of Congress to push for what numbers have been pushing for a long time, which is ending U.S. support militarily to Saudi Arabia. Karen Atiyah of the Washington Post joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to take this across to Mr. Azam Tamimi, a friend of Jamal Khashoggi, who joins us on this broadcast live from London. Azam Tamimi, help us understand, as a friend of Khashoggi, you've seen what Recep Tayyip Erdogan had said in the Turkish parliament. Pressure is building on Saudi Arabia clearly at this point in time. And we're looking at a possibility of the Crown Prince himself getting the boot.
I think eventually this crisis has no solution other than the removal of Mohammed bin Salman. As my friend David Hurst wrote yesterday in Middle East Eye, leaving Saudi Arabia in the hands of Mohammed bin Salman poses a great danger to the region and to the world as a whole, because he's erratic, he is mad, and he thinks he can get away with anything he does. So eventually, this is what has to happen. Any solution short of this will not be acceptable to the world public opinion.
Right. Stay with us, Mr. Tamimi. I'm going to take this across to Onur Erdem, a political analyst joining us from Istanbul. Onur, when you see the developments over the last 48 hours or so, how do you rate this? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about sanctions from the U.S., which is at this point in time looks very difficult, because the president of the United States of America has repeatedly stressed upon the multi-$100 billion arms deals that the two countries have, and there's that is going to stand in the way of the U.S. imposing sanctions on Saudi Arabia.
Well, of course, President Trump has clearly put out, and he's not hiding this, that he's going to value arms sales in billions of dollars, despite a bloody killing of a Saudi journalist by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, where up the ladder both of this will go up to, we'll see. But as you could clearly hear from Erdogan's speech today, neither Erdogan nor the world public opinion will be satisfied unless the rightful person that pulled the trigger, that has to be high up in the kingdom's Saud family, will be brought to justice.
Right. And Anwar, if I were to ask you, what do you think happens next in Istanbul in Turkey? Because it's very clear that the Turkish government, the Turkish investigation into the murder has been bent upon releasing details through either official or unofficial channels over the last couple of weeks or so. Now, after the president's speech in the parliament, what do you think is going to happen on ground in Istanbul?
Well, let's make a couple of things clear. As you said, as we all suspect, most or all of the info that has been leaked so far was probably leaked by the Turkish officials. There's no doubt to that. But as opposed, in regards to the criticism today that Erdogan, despite the expectations of the media around the world, that he would actually go into more detail or with new proofs, you have to realize this is a case that has been an official case since the day after it happened by the Turkish Chief Prosecutor's Office. By Turkish law, and which is the same pretty much all around the world, at this stage, no one can talk about or release information about during the fact-finding period. So if Erdogan has talked about any concrete proofs today, he would have, really be in trouble with the law, because he would be doing something very, very, unlawful and very much punishable by Turkish law. So, but bear in mind, what he said today there was two very important messages to from my perspective. One is that President Erdogan said we have suspicion that there are co-conspirators in the countries other than Saudi Arabia. Was he pointing out the U.S. or Israel or other nations? We don't know. We shall see. The second thing is, which is more important and more concrete, he basically said we have concrete proof that this was a pre-planned, premeditated murder, which is also important, which is telling us that, which is telling me that I think today he made his last public courtesy call to Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to come out clean and go after who really pulled the trigger, whomever it may be. Whether that is so or not, and if that is so, whether the pressure will be enough to remove him from his post, I don't know. But at the end of the day, let's just jot down this in the history that President Trump has put a number on human life. He put a number on Khashoggi's life. He put a number on an innocent journalist's life, which is billions of dollars in sales, in military sales to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Right, Honor Erim and Mr. Azam Tamimi, requesting both of you to stay with us, because we're now cutting across to live visuals coming in, or the latest visuals of the Future Investment Initiative, or the summit in Riyadh that has been dubbed as Davos in the desert. Visuals of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the Saudi Investment Summit. He was scheduled to speak at the summit, but we understand from reports that he has cancelled the speech at the Investment Summit. We are also now being joined in the broadcast by Shahid Amanullah, former senior advisor, U.S. Department of State. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Shahid Amanullah, thank you so much for joining us. So stay with us. I'm going to quickly take this across to Mr. Tamimi. Mr. Tamimi, after listening to the Turkish president, what are your thoughts? He promised the naked truth, as it were, but what did you make of his speech in the Turkish parliament?
I think it was a very good speech. It was balanced. It was a head of state's speech. It is true that it came disappointing for people who thought they hear more from him. But that's people's choice. People raise their own expectations, and the media played a role in this. Since yesterday, I heard several Turkish commentators saying, don't expect much because the investigation is still going on. You see, what matters in Erdogan's speech is not what he told us about what happened to Khashoggi, because we already know that. But what matters is what he told us has to happen from now on. He insisted upon the Saudis to tell him who sent the 15 men to Istanbul. There must be someone who gave them the authority. They could not have been behaving on their own merit. He also requested or suggested that they should be tried, the 18 suspects should be tried in Istanbul, because if they are given a trial in Saudi Arabia, you can be assured there will be no justice and no facts coming out of it. But if they are given to Istanbul, where the crime was committed, to be tried in public, then we will know all the details, and that's an important issue. Of course, the other thing is that he told the Saudis indirectly that whatever you have been saying about this case right from the start, whenever you said something, because they kept silent for a long period, it wasn't true, you have not been telling the truth, so come clean on this. What Erdogan wanted to tell the Saudis also is that this is not a score settling between us and you. This is a crime. This is a vicious crime that was committed on our soil, and we need to dig into it, and you need to help us do that. Now, if they don't answer his questions satisfactorily, I think he will take this to the next level.
To the next level. Shahid Amanullah, I'm going to bring that to you. What do you think that next level is? He's asked 6 questions today, Shahid Amanullah, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and that's adding to all the already long list of questions over Jamal Khashoggi's murder.
Yeah, so you have to take a step back and understand this, the place that we're in. This is there's so many different tensions going on right now. You've got, of course, this perfect storm in America. We have a very sympathetic president in Trump to Saudi Arabia being able to do kind of what it wants. You have a struggle between 2 entities, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, that are kind of vying to be kind of the polar representative of Sunni Islam. And then you have journalists, which in a very turbulent world are going out there and trying to seek the truth and project it out. And the fact that Adnan Khashoggi had over 1 million Twitter followers means that you can't disappear someone like that and not have people notice. And had it not been for the public, for the social media audience, and for people who, and for the viciousness of this alleged crime, I don't think you'd see as much movement as you have. But what it's showing now is that we don't live in a world anymore where governments can do things behind the scenes and jockey for position in the old realpolitik way. You have to contend with the other major player in the room, and that is the people, as represented on social media, as able to express their opinions in ways that really cannot be silenced. And what happens next is going to depend on how much those voices are listened to by Turkey, by Saudi Arabia, and by the U.S. government.
Right. Honor Erim, if I were to ask you, Mr. Tamimi is talking about how if Mr. Erdogan does not get answers to his questions, he will take things to another level in Turkey and Istanbul. He is wanting to try all those 15 people in Turkey. Do you think Saudi Arabia will allow Turkey to do that? If they don't, and if the Saudi doesn't give answers to Erdogan's questions, what do you think will happen after?
I think whatever can happen or whatever can be established would have to be with the willingness, obviously, of the KSA. Now, don't forget, as KSA kept saying that this happened on their sovereign soil within the consulate, and to one of their own citizens, that he was not just murdered but slain, and we don't even know how his body was disposed. That could also be another very dramatic story. But things will come up. Don't you, make the mistake that President Trump can keep up his stubborn, commitment of selling arms to Saudi Arabia if things progress the way we think they're going to progress with this dramatic story. the world, the pressure from the world that I would think would build up would not allow that. Also, don't forget, if this again ends up the way we think it is, we're going to start questioning a lot of things. Saudi Arabia also houses the holy site to Islam, and the second holy site, Mecca and Medina. We will now start questioning the pilgrims going to for their pilgrimage within Saudi Arabia. So that could also start being questioned from now on, which would be a really major topic to talk about in the coming up days. So Saudi Arabia could be facing a lot of questions and a lot of sanctions, maybe not the way we think right now, but in different ways. And again, believe it or not, believe me, the President of the United States alone will not be able to withstand that pressure if they don't start coming out clean, if they don't really put out the real responsible persons behind this and satisfy the world and the public opinion all throughout the world.
Right, Mr. Azam Tamimi, some also say that although there is huge, humongous pressure on both Saudi Arabia and the US, there's too much money at stake. So which means that they will wait for this entire Khashoggi saga to blow over and see what is the best that can be done in the given situation. However, business will continue as usual.
I mean, business...
Well, that will be difficult, really.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Tamimi, please go ahead.
Yeah, it is true that there is a lot of money involved and business is important. But the issue here is has really surpassed all of this. Now, we're talking about a person who is likely very soon to become the king of the richest country in the world, or in the region, the richest country in the region, and the biggest oil producer in the world. And he is a madman. And now, world public opinion, represented by journalists around the world, are telling their governments that if this man can do this when he is a crown prince, imagine what he can do when he becomes king. And imagine what he'll do if he feels safe that he can do whatever he wants and get away with it. That's the danger. It's not about relations with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is a very important country. It's important for America, it's important for Turkey, it's important for many countries in the world. But it's about the man in the driving seat of this country. He is leading that country to destruction. And if he is changed, if he is removed, although it might seem a bit difficult now, then relations can continue with Saudi Arabia, with the contracts, with whatever rubbish the West manufactures and throws onto the Arabs to take their money. But the issue is that this is the first the first type of ruler in Saudi Arabia, and he poses a great danger to the world.
Shahid Amanullah, I'm going to come to you for the last question of this discussion. What are the chances? What do you think will happen? Because in this scheme of affairs, as Mr. Tamimi is telling us, if you take the crown prince out of the equation and the king of Saudi Arabia, King Salman, takes charge of the reins of the country, then the world can go back to doing business, but at the same time make Khashoggi's murder count.
So if you look at what Saudi Arabia is trying to do with its economy, the old Saudi economy, which was backdoor deals dealing with primarily the energy sector, could have survived something like this. But if you look at where Saudi Arabia is trying to go with its NEOM project, with its 2030 plan, it depends on engaging with the public. And then it depends on engaging with private companies who are very susceptible to being swayed by efforts like this. The only way to save these new projects, which are really ambitious projects, 100 billion plus projects, is to be clean and open and have an honest conversation with the public. Because that's the only way that this new economy is going to work. Otherwise, Saudi Arabia can go right back to its old economy, which could survive something like this.
Shahid Amanullah joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. And of course, Mr. Azam Tamimi joining us live from London. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for being with us here on WION Fineprint.
Thank you.
And with that, it's a wrap here on the show, but we will continue our pursuit of where the naked truth about Jamal Khashoggi's murder is here on WION. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.